And thanks for joining us as we dive into all things people, power, and politics. This, my friends, is The Pulse. I'm Roop Raj. You'd have to be living under a rock if you didn't know this, but Congress did send President Donald Trump's so-called big, beautiful bill to his desk for signing. And there's a lot being said on social media, so we're here to arm you with the facts. Yes, Karen Dumas and Jason Cable-Rowe are here to debate what happens moving forward. But there's a lot of anxiety about it, especially surrounding those cuts to Medicaid. And some people who aren't on Medicaid or don't know people who may be on it, they're saying things like, I'm tired of hearing about possible cuts when we don't have all the details. We don't really know how this bill will impact people. Well, we just don't know how far-reaching the impact could be. Well, if you're tired of hearing about it, imagine being on Medicaid or having a loved one on it and being anxious about what it could mean. They're not tired, but exhausted from the anxiety of just not knowing. So what do we want to do? We're going to start digging for answers to quell some of those nerves. Elder law attorney Pat Simasko is back to answer your questions. So stop the doom scrolling, toss that phone aside, and just hang with us. We've got you covered like we do each and every night. That's going to be the bulk of our show tonight. You'll be watching on your TV, phone, or iPad. But before we get to that, let's run through some of the other big stories making news at this hour, and there is so much going on. We'll begin here. The government's top vaccine official restricting approval of 2 COVID vaccines. Federal documents show that's disregarding recommendations by government scientists. The shots were approved in May after months of analysis. Staffers plan to approve them for everyone 12 and older. But Dr. Vinay Prasad said they should be limited to high-risk individuals. Prasad works under Health and Human Services Secretary RFK Jr., who's long questioned the benefits of vaccines. The Environmental Protection Agency places 139 employees for speaking against its policies under the Trump administration. The workers wrote in a letter released Monday the agency is no longer living up to its mission to protect human health and the environment. The EPA says the workers are on leave with pay while an investigation takes place. The agency accuses them of unlawfully undermining the administration's agenda. And finally, the Supreme Court agrees to hear a case about which school sports transgender students can join. Idaho and West Virginia both put restrictions in place. The lower courts upheld them. The justices recently upheld Tennessee's ban on gender-affirming care for minors. More than 24 states have laws barring transgender women and girls from taking place in certain sports. Some of those have been blocked in courts. Now back to the big, beautiful bill. Tax breaks and spending cuts now heading to the Oval Office. President Donald Trump wanted it there by tomorrow, and he plans to sign it on the 4th of July. It makes his 2017 tax cuts permanent. It adds new ones like no taxes on tips and pays for it primarily with cuts to Medicaid and SNAP benefits. Just 2 Republicans broke rank and joined Democrats in voting no, the final tally being 218 to 212. Now, before the vote, House Speaker Mike Johnson urged his colleagues to vote on the bill as Majority Leader Steve Scalise credited the White House with getting most members in line.
We are working hard and we are delivering on our promise to make America great again.
You know, every step of the way, President Trump has been right there talking to our members, walking them through why this bill is so important for the country.
This follows a marathon session by House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, who made a huge push to delay the vote. Jeffries spoke for 8 hours and 44 minutes, starting a little before 5 this morning, where he not only criticized the bill, but also riffed on hip-hop, King George III, and his own life story. Anything to buy some time in protest. Jeffries has unlimited time, by the way, to speak as Democratic leader. He actually broke that record set by then Congressman Kevin McCarthy in 2021. He said he felt it was his duty to take his sweet time.
Every single Democrat stands in strong opposition to this bill because we're standing up for the American people. We don't work for Donald Trump. We work for the American people.
Well, as you can imagine, reaction to the bill passing is pouring in, and we say this show is all about you. We care about what you think, what you have to say, and this is what some of you had to tell us on the Fox 2 Facebook page. Samantha, thanks for writing in. What a disgrace. Let's make the rich richer and the people that are struggling struggle even more. Sherry, thanks for writing in. Very sad, you say. Just another perk for the rich. Ted says, God bless America. What a wonderful birthday present to the nation from our president and Republican Party members. Kevin says, so we can now get rid of the fallacy that the Republican Party is fiscally responsible. And Brad said, good job, Congress. This is exactly what we voted for. As you can imagine, Republicans were jubilant after the bill passed. House Speaker Mike Johnson joking that he's a danger to himself and others because he and a few others literally haven't slept in days, but credited House Republicans for getting that job done.
Many of you have asked me this question in the hall over the last couple of days, but when it looked like that we might actually deliver this thing, particularly this morning, how did you know? I mean, what kept you going? Why did you think this was possible? You guys made an audacious plan. You brought the most comprehensive, complicated piece of legislation, probably, arguably in the top 2 or 3 in the history of the Congress, with the smallest margin in U.S. history, which we had for a big chunk of the first 100 days.
President Trump spoke before boarding Air Force One to head to Iowa, saying his visit is going to be a celebration, calling it the biggest bill of its kind.
We're going to get great growth. I think we'll have growth in record numbers. This is going to be something that's amazing, and everybody was watching it all over the world. And I want to congratulate the Speaker and Tom Emmer and Steve Scalise and everybody else. I mean, they worked so hard, so hard. This has really been going on for over a year, if you think about it. I think, to be exact, about 14 months. And this was the culmination, and I guess it ended a lot earlier. A lot of people thought it would end up the following afternoon when it ended up late in the evening, but they were great.
And so from a celebration to anxiety, the cuts to Medicaid and SNAP, so many people talking about that and worried about it. And you know what? The Republicans are saying, look, this is cutting waste, fraud, and abuse. And the work requirements will make sure only people who need Medicaid are on it. But many Democrats say it'll just cause people to slip through the cracks. Now, this is a number you've heard several times, 11.8 million. That's how many people the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office says could lose coverage by the year 2034. We're keeping this conversation going after the break. Two voices very well known in our community, Jason Cable-Rowe and Karen Dumas, are in Studio C to talk about the impact this could have. And later, an elder law attorney answering your questions about who may lose out on health care. You're watching The Pulse here on Fox 2. Back now on The Pulse, looking at all things people, power, and politics. Joining us now to talk about President Trump's big, beautiful bill passing, Karen Dumas with the No BS News Hour, and Republican strategist Jason Cable-Rowe. Good to see you both. Thanks for joining us here on The Pulse. All right, so my first question, are you surprised that this bill passed? Karen?
Actually, no, I'm not surprised. I mean, Donald Trump has the support. He has influence or control over every branch of government, and this is what he said he was going to do, and his supporters are making it happen. I mean, so no, I'm not surprised at all.
800 and some pages, Jason Cable-Rowe. So many things in there were objectionable, even to some conservatives, two of whom voted no in the House. Are you surprised?
I'm not so much surprised, I'm impressed, because 2 days ago there were more than 20 Republicans who were no's. And I mean, I would say you got to give, I mean, obviously Donald Trump plays a big role in this, but Speaker Johnson has been underestimated ever since he became the speaker, and he keeps finding a way to get these things through. And he did it with a margin. I mean, it's 218, 214. He had some room to spare. And so some of those members, maybe in vulnerable seats, could have taken a walk on this one to avoid the political repercussions of it. And they didn't. They stuck with the team on it.
You know, so let's talk about some of those Republicans. Thomas Massey from Kentucky and Brian Fitzpatrick in Pennsylvania. Fitzpatrick voted no, so did Massey. And in doing so, Fitzpatrick basically said, this isn't good for my constituents. And I found that to be very interesting because that was what was holding so many people back. What are the constituents going to say?
Well, what I would say, you know, I've been doing this for more than 30 years, and I've been, you know, attacked as a Republican for wanting to cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid as long as I've been in this business. It never seems to actually happen. And the reality is there are 93 million Americans, 27% of the population, that are Medicaid recipients today. Do we actually believe that 27% of the American population needs Medicaid, which is for the poor? So there is a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse within that. And so the 11 million that you mentioned in the introduction are people that probably are not entitled to those benefits or don't necessarily need to have them. And we have a $1.9 trillion deficit, a $37 trillion debt. We've got to find some places to start pulling back on the government spending. This is one of many that we have to look at.
You say that, Jason, but we're talking about a $3.3 trillion increase in the nation's debt because of this bill.
According to the CBO. No Republican has paid attention to the CBO's score for 30 years because they don't use dynamic scoring when they do it, which dynamic scoring, for your viewers, is when you cut taxes, you spur economic growth. And so it's accounting for the growth in the economy and what that might look like. They don't do that when they score, so Republicans don't care what the CBO has
Let's
to
not
say.
talk about the national debt if this is not how we know that this is going to end up. How are things going to end up for the people out there? 11 million people, according to the Congressional Budget Office. Do you believe that that number is accurate?
Well,
and do you believe that all of those people are deserving of Medicaid?
Well, but that's the thing, though. It's like, I think it's unfair for you to just wipe out everything on the pretense that there may be some misuse or fraud. And people that have never had the need or the necessity for support systems like SNAP or like Medicaid feel like it has no role or responsibility for anybody's life. So it's a disconnect from that. Is there waste in in federal government? No doubt. But you can't approach it with a hatchet. I think it has to have a scalpless approach. It has to be done deliberately and intentionally. And I think that you are going to create a wider crack through which a lot of people are going to fall. The angst, the anxiety that people are feeling and experiencing right now. I have clients who have constituents that are dependent on these resources, and the anxiety alone about what's going to happen to them and their loved ones is just, it's almost brutal. It's having a negative effect on them.
And it's interesting because I talked to one elder law attorney who said that I can turn any conservative into a Democrat by talking about his mom who's sitting in an elder care facility who is on Medicaid, who's worried. Do you think that's an accurate way of depicting it?
But should it be about partisan politics? Everybody gets old. Some people lose their economic footing. Some people never have it. So I don't think that that's necessarily a partisan approach. Now, overall, I think Democrats fuel dependency and that Republicans encourage responsibility, but I think they do so without the awareness of what it takes in order to be self-sufficient. And so decisions are made without, the whole pull yourself up by your bootstraps, without recognizing that some people don't have boots.
Jason, I do want to recognize the fact that even though there are individuals that may not lose their Medicaid, there are facilities that may lose funding. And that's something that I think has been lost in the conversation. Your concerns, as someone who I know is a conservative, and I know you well, you're a good man who cares about people. Are you concerned about those facilities? For instance, anyone who's watching from one of those right now, losing funding?
Well, I think, again, I had an exchange with a journalist earlier today. We have to wait and see because right now there's so much rhetoric about what's going to happen. If you listen to Hakeem Jeffries today, tens of thousands of people are going to die because of this. Now, that is very inflamed rhetoric, and it's nowhere near the reality. I think back to John Engler. I'm old enough to remember when he, in his first term as governor in the 90s, eliminated welfare for able-bodied recipients. The rhetoric and the protests were very similar to what we're seeing today, believe it or not. And he did it very early in his first term so that you could see the impact of the policies. And what ended up happening is we didn't see all the despair that we were promised by the Democrats at the time. And he got reelected in a landslide. He won 82 of the 83 counties in the state, including Wayne County. But it was the same rhetoric. It was the same kind
Jason,
of thing.
and I understand what you're saying, but I want to go back to the concern that people have about these facilities, the quality of food that people are being delivered, bed bugs, issues that they can eradicate through funding that comes from Medicaid to facilities. Are you concerned that facilities in our state could lose funding because of these cuts?
Well, I think anyone would be concerned. But again, I'm saying we don't know what the rhetoric is versus the reality. And I think until the policies are implemented, and you also have state safety nets in addition. A lot of these facilities are getting local funding, they're getting state funding, they're getting federal funding. So there's going to have to be a reorganization, maybe a consolidation in some of these places, but I don't think we're going to really know until the policies are implemented.
Karen, I do want to ask you about, it's interesting, Jason mentioned 27% was the proposed number of people who are currently need Medicaid, and he's saying that perhaps is not the correct number because there are many people who are simply taking without doing the work. What are your thoughts on the work requirements and the eligibility requirements that are being put into this bill?
Well, and I'm not familiar with all of those. But I think that the bigger conversation is about a landscape that continues to produce people that aren't able to do for themselves. Substandard education. opportunities that are still selective or subjective. And people do get lost in the fray. And so when you talk about eliminating waste and you talk about making people or positioning them so that they can take care of themselves, we've got to look at the bigger picture, and that picture does not exist. And so, I think the conversation has to be comprehensive, and I don't think that you can just go in and accuse everybody of mismanagement or waste or fraud, because there are people who sincerely need and depend upon these resources.
I think that we're in the company of two very smart people who have consulted with other very smart people. You literally were consulting with the mayor of Detroit. You have consulted with so many lawmakers. When you look at this story unfolding on television, you see jubilance from the Republican Party about passing this bill, but you don't hear a hell of a lot of people addressing the concerns that real Americans have, both who are white and rural and black and urban and all of us in between. Do you think that that's a misstep by the Republican Party to not address the real concern here?
Listen, I think it's a flawed bill, but I think the thing that most people right now think are the flaws are not the flaws. I think there is some spending stuff. I think for everything that people have been put through, from DOGE to where we are today, to not reduce the budget deficit more than what we've seen so far. But the problem is this is all rhetoric. When you are scaring people, I mean, a lot of the things you're talking about is the rhetoric terrifying people because they are believing Democratic lawmakers that are saying very terrifying things. And I don't think the Republicans believe those things.
We have to go, but I want to say we bring you both to this table, and as we do every night, a Democrat and a Republican, so that we don't want to terrify people. We want to hear from both of these perspectives and many others in between, and we're going to keep doing that on this show. Karen, Jason, thanks for your time here on The Pulse tonight.
Thanks, Rick.
We're taking your questions about the impact of Medicaid next on The Pulse to someone who's an elder law attorney. Pat Simasko is ready to answer them next.
Yes.
It is People, Power, and Politics. Welcome back to Detroit's only nightly political talk show, The Pulse. Joining us now to talk about the possible fallout involving Medicaid and answering your questions, elder law attorney Pat Simasko. Pat, we only have a few minutes here, but I want to say thanks for joining us. We know that you're on break here on this weekend, but you still took the time because it's such an important topic.
Thanks so much, Roop.
We have some questions from our viewers. We believe that this show is really about our viewers at home, and we don't want to just talk about it. We want to show you. And so here's the first question coming from one of our Good Pulse viewers.
Okay.
Thanks for your question here today. Mario, my mother is 94 years old. Is she going to lose her Medicaid?
No, if she's on Medicaid, she's not going to lose Medicaid. And the requirements for the new bill of her going to work and stuff like that, she's not going to lose anything. They have nothing to worry about. And that's kind of what the problem that's going on right now. There's so much misinformation going back and forth between the political sides. It's all or nothing. Millions of people are going to die. Everybody's on, fraud and waste. It's crazy. And I'm going to tell you, we've had 10 families come in and disinherit a kid because of politics.
Wow. Yeah, no, it's obviously an issue. The collateral damage of the fighting between Republicans and Democrats ends up being the angst and anxiety of the people who voted for them, which is really quite sad. But we do have another question. We want to get to it right away here. Pat, thank you so much for your time here. Let's go right to Sarah here on The Pulse. Sarah, thanks for your question. Are the disabled exempt from the Medicaid bill?
No. So part of the Medicaid is you get Medicaid for low-income people and low assets, which is prescription coverage, hospital things, stuff like that. If you're disabled, you can get more benefits. She will absolutely still getting the benefit. And the problem is there may be some additional reporting requirements. Instead of once a year, it'll be twice a year. And some of the services may be cut back. Daycare, transportation, parents helping to take care of their son or daughter. So she'll absolutely be getting the benefits. Some of them may be cut back or restricted.
Yeah, and those reporting requirements, so some people are concerned about being able to get their loved one over to a place to report, and that's going to be a challenge for people who don't have cars. So there are questions about that as well.
No, it's not that, because that reporting is online. It's just submitting paperwork to it. The trouble is, if you screw up, you used to be able to go back 3 months and retroactively apply to get those benefits back. Now it's only a 1 month retro, which means you got to be careful and pay attention to the mail and the paperwork that comes in. You got to follow up.
Yeah, so it's not necessarily about visiting an office, but about getting all of this done and making sure you do it right, so that your benefits do remain. That's very important. Thank you for that distinction. Carl, our next question here on The Pulse. Thanks for your question. Why is Medicaid coverage, which is free, so much better than Medicare, which we pay for?
Well, so Medicare, you do pay for it, and it's just hospital insurance, and you have a copay. So it's Medicare is your primary when you turn 65, then you get a supplemental insurance, which has limitations on how much you can get. When you get Medicaid, that is the insurance of last resort, so it literally covers everything. It covers everything if you're in a nursing home. It covers all your prescriptions. It covers any of the services that you're entitled to because you don't have any money to pay for anything more. You're only allowed to keep $60 a month in a nursing home, and the rest has to go to your care. So there just isn't any other medical expenses that you're going to have.
Pat, another question from Sandy here tonight, kind of zooming all the way out and thinking about everybody, regardless of Medicaid coverage or not, saying how much is all of our insurance going to increase since all the Medicaid people will use the emergency room for doctor visits, and of course we pay, and unfortunately many of them will die because their condition is caught late. Basically saying those who are cut off Medicaid will go to the ER instead, and all of us will have to pay. Your thoughts on that mindset?
Well, what happens is, so up in a rural hospital, let's say there's a higher percentage of Medicaid patients in rural areas than in the cities. So if the Medicaid benefits are cut, the hospital may be increasing other costs for other paying people, for insurance people and things like that. If you show up to the hospital and you need emergency care, they're going to have to give you the care, but they may not get paid for it. So I think the hospitals are the ones that are really going to be taking the biggest risk here because their benefits are going to be cut. The services may have to be cut. Hours may have to be cut. Wages may have to be cut. The benefits to the population maybe have to be cut.
Rhonda has a question about a different kind of disability. Oftentimes when we talk about disabilities, we talk about physical disabilities. Rhonda's asking about intellectual disabilities, saying how will this affect people who are dealing with that, specifically adults who can't work due to their disability?
They're going to get it. It's like, it's a young person that has cerebral palsy or Down syndrome or had a brain injury or fell and cracked their head, and now they can't work. They're going to get the disability type of Medicaid. Again, they will absolutely keep getting it. They're going to have to report, make sure the benefits keep coming in, which means they're probably going to be needing help from a family member or a loved one. But in some of the services may be cut back. Daycare may be cut back. Respite care may be cut back. Transportation may be cut back. So the benefits may be reduced, but they will absolutely get the Medicaid, may be limited to, but they're not going to get cut off. No one's going to be thrown out. It's everybody can just relax for a bit. It's going to be fine.
Well, Pat, you know what? With all the political warfare that happens in D.C., as we talk about, you know, at the end, you have people feeling the angst and anxiety. But you know what? We think it's really, really important that you join us so that we can clear the air from a nonpartisan point of view to talk about how people are affected. So, Pat Simasko, thank you so much.
No political talks around the campfire this weekend.
No,
it's not worth it.
You're having a good time up north, and we thank you for taking time out of your
do it.
Pat, thank you so much for your time. We always like to have you on. That is The Pulse for tonight. Thanks for joining us. I'm Rup Raj. As always, it was good to be with you.